All right, it's time for another political breakfast. I want to welcome you all back. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for listening on WABE. With me are our strategist, Republican strategist Brian Robinson, and Democratic strategist Tharon Johnson. Welcome to another week. The legislative session underway. We're already a month into the session, and we haven't had a chance to talk about Governor Brian Kemp's top legislative priority. That is tort reform. And I know, Brian, you've paid close attention to this. And do you really think that should be the top priority at this point? It's near and dear to him. And I don't know, are Georgians paying as close attention to this as he is?
This is one of those issues where it is up to the people who are impacted to talk about it and explain it to Georgians. And I think what we do know is, are Georgians highly educated on the impact of our litigation laws? No. I do think that there's a lot of money being spent right now to tell them the issue that we're facing in Georgia. And what we are seeing in the data is that Georgia is an outlier as far as our tort reform laws, or as I would say, is a Republican litigation abuse that we're seeing in this state. I've seen one multi-state retailer, grocer more specifically, who sent me a memo that showed that the cost and number of lawsuits against them in Metro Atlanta alone, just in these core counties, was more than all of the cost and number of lawsuits that they had in several other states combined. And so we have a system where insurance companies are settling claims, even ridiculous claims, that don't have any serious argument that the defendant was negligent or in any way at fault for what happened. The insurance company just settling the claim for ridiculous sums because they do not trust the jackpot juries that are coming out of Georgia courtrooms. It's just the risks are too high. So if we can pay off some money for $1.7 million and avoid the danger of a $40 million verdict for something that we aren't anyway responsible for, then we'll do it. And so business after business has a story like this. Some of the stories I've seen, Lisa, are businesses that are being sued for crimes that happened by third parties off of their property, just nearby their business. Some of the businesses are being sued when they were closed at the time of the crime. This is insane, and there needs to be some common sense and rationality imposed onto the system. We all believe, this is very important for Republicans to say, we all believe that Georgians should have their right to justice. They have access to the court system. But we can't just have insane verdicts thinking that no one pays. There's never any cost. This is driving up insurance. Insurance companies are leaving the state. They are voting with their feet and getting out of here. Businesses are left with higher premiums and, in many cases, less options for coverage. That is not good for any of us. We all pay higher prices at the end of the day.
At the Capitol last week, everyone down there has been anxiously awaiting to see what the bill looks like. And to be fully disclosed, as we're taping, neither myself or B-Rob have actually seen the bill. But it had 6 parts of it, Lisa and Lily, that I thought was very important. The first part was reevaluating the standard of negligent security liability, which is premises liability, which you hear a lot at the Capitol. Second was calculating medical damages in personal injury cases. That's called platform damages. Trial bifurcation, allowing a jury to know whether the plaintiff wore their seatbelt. That was something that was admissible seatbelt evidence, right? Which is something that a lot of folks did not know in Georgia that you did not have to disclose. Eliminating plaintiff's dismissal during trial. And then the last one was reforming and transparency to third-party litigation funding. So it's really good for us to let our listeners know, Lisa. Most of the folks I would assume that listen to this podcast don't even know what tort reform is. But B-Rob just did an excellent job of talking about how Georgia is definitely the number one state to do business. Part of that great success is being number one state to do businesses are a lot of different companies, whether you're doctor's offices, insurance companies, small businesses. And what happened at the Capitol last week, Lisa, was that the governor was surrounded by hundreds of people when he announced this legislation. And it was very good for me to see that there was not just big business folks there. You had small business folks. You had folks from the medical community, folks from Middle Georgia and others, and just surrounding the governor, the lieutenant governor, speaker, as you talk about this reform measure. Now, With that being said, there is a robust coalition that has been built to really push this bill, and there's anticipation that there will be pushback. Not only will there be pushback from the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, there will be pushback from some Republicans and some Democrats. And so getting this out the way that the governor did, really taking his time to outline those 6 key categories of the bill, which is very comprehensive. I'm being told that some folks maybe wanted it to be a little bit more focus on narrowing it to maybe only 3 or 4, but to come out with a comprehensive piece of legislation. What we can anticipate now, Lisa, is that there will be debate. You will hear folks, opponents of the bill, come back and sort of nitpick things that are not necessary or give their sort of viewpoint on it. Now, there's going to be a lot of comparisons to what's happening in Florida and some nearby states, and they passed some legislation. And what the opposition of this bill will say is that you haven't seen the insurance prices go down. I believe, though, Lisa, if you look at just the momentum and the folks that are working on this, I think the governor, those who are proponents of this bill, are off to a great start. A lot of these business owners are being educated about what this means for them. Georgia Trial Lawyers Association in Georgia is a force to be reckoned with. And not only have they just been giving out money, I mean, they've been building sustainable, systemic, real relationships with legislators. And so, Lisa, I believe that this bill has great momentum. It has great support right now until we see it. Once you see it, you'll hear Democrats and opposition folks and some Republicans raise some concerns about it. But for the governor to put his political capital on this with tremendous support from the lieutenant governor and the speaker, and who will be the sponsors of the bill, this is something that Georgia and listeners of this podcast will be talking about probably all the way up until Sunday Die, which will be on April 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one thing that I've mentioned here for the last 2 years is Governor Kemp has more political capital than anybody else in the state. No one even comes close. You can't see number 2 from behind Brian Kemp. And he has not really put his shoulder behind one particular issue until now in his second term. And this is it. By the time we get to 2026, we'll be in the heat of a governor's race for the open seat, and his influence will not be what it is today. He is still at the height of his powers, the height of his influence, and he can muscle this through. What I'm seeing, building off of what Tharon said, what I'm seeing of the coalitions, the Democrats seem to be speaking against this legislation as a caucus, almost universally in some of their news releases I'm seeing, like they've taken a caucus position against it. I haven't seen Democrats stepping into the fray, kind of like getting away from the herd on this issue. I think some Democrats, pro-business Democrats, should take a strong look at it. I really was hoping that Senator Emanuel Jones, who's a business owner himself, would have been willing to step out and oppose his party and do the right thing on this issue. Now that he's running for Congress against David Scott, I don't see him necessarily risking the trial attorney donations for his federal race that he may be hoping to get. So, but there are a few other pro-business Democrats out there that I would love to get. Because I'll tell you, one thing Tharon and I talked about with the Georgia Chamber during the fall when we addressed them is for black business owners, their insurance is astronomical if they happen to be in a zip code that has a high crime rate in it. And it makes it really difficult for black entrepreneurs to get a business up and going just because the cost of access to starting a business is so high. That's bad for all of us. Right here in Black History Month, we were talking earlier about the importance of black business owners in America and in Georgia. This is an obstacle for them. So that's something I wish Democrats would consider. And Tharon said some Republicans may oppose. Man, there's going to be tremendous pressure on them to get on board with this. Some of those who have been against this in the past have statewide office ambitions. It's going to be very difficult to oppose the governor and this big Republican push and then run in a primary next year.
And real quick, Lisa, I just want to say this. It's Senate Bill 68. And so I know I reported earlier.
And 69, too.
And 69, correct.
Yep.
So I think folks can pull it up, read it yourself. Senate Bill 68 and 69. It's got text of the bill. And just to really respond quickly to something Brian said, I do believe that this debate will take a turn because you haven't really seen the opposition present their case just yet. So that's coming. I don't know if there would be a lot of Republicans who will oppose, but I just think that the coalition that's pushing this bill can't assume that they're going to have every single Republican support this without question. And I think
That's right.
that's not what Brian's saying. Brian, we're saying the same thing. But I think you'll also have some Democrats who are going to ask some very tough questions. And then there's going to be the level of humanization, Lisa. We're going to hear from the other side. We're going to hear from those families that have actually suffered and they were able to have a lawyer represent them and to win a trial. But there are some people that believe, to what Brian was saying, that we've just had some astronomical numbers with some of these cases. And I just think that the business owners, depending on who you talk to, and doctors, they talk about how the rates are competitive. And then, we haven't had this happen. But if you look at what happened out with the wildfires, think about those people who moved into those areas and took that risk because they knew that there was a possibility of fire. And so the other side of this debate is that, where are we really in Georgia as far as the cost as it compared to other, like the insurance rates? But I think right now, tremendous momentum, great optics at the Capitol. The governor and his team did a good job of getting folks out there and the coalitions that are working on this. But, we know this from reporting on the Capitol. It's all what's in the bill. And I do think there will be a compromise. I think at the end of the day, there's going to have to be some type of compromising on both sides to try to get this bill passed.
But something will get done. I think we both, Tharon and I both agree, something's going to get done with the governor being behind it, the speaker, lieutenant governor. Something's going to get across the finish line. And I want to say this as a former communications director for a Georgia governor who has spearheaded and orchestrated many news conferences there on those steps of the north wing of the Capitol. I have never in my career seen a turnout like what we saw last Thursday for the governor's news conference. I have never seen anything like it. Okay. And so you started out asking about the groundswell amongst regular Georgians.
Yeah, that says a lot.
To have people leave work for the day.
Yeah.
Get child care arrangements and show up at the Capitol says a lot.
That answered the question.
Their passion. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Quickly, before we get out of here, just to get quick reaction for you, we probably could talk about this more in greater detail next week. But Speaker John Burns talking about school safety today. We've anticipated this coming, and finally it has. Do you applaud that move at this point? Tharon, you first.
Lisa, I was optimistic and thankful that Speaker Burns is following up on his commitment to address public safety concerns that many parents, including myself and others, have about what children and teachers and faculty, coaches are enduring in our school systems. I believe his announcement is a good step forward to making sure that Georgia continues to be a leader in this field. However, I've said this before. I think that we need to have a fully funded, mandated portion of the budget that allows us to have a trained, armed employee resource officer in every single school in Georgia. And I believe we have the money to do it. I also want to applaud the speaker for dealing with something that is also very important in this, and that is making sure that we have the connectivity with the communication platforms, which I'm sure Brian will talk about in a second, that they introduced in the budget. And then lastly, supporting those counselors. Let's identify those mental problems early on. If a child is going through something at school, these counselors and these teachers should feel safe. They should feel emboldened to really make sure that they not only communicate with the parents, but there's got to be a system in place, multi-jurisdictional system in place to communicate to these other schools that, hey, this troubled youth is coming to your school, or hey, we just embraced or inherited this troubled youth, and he or she may be going through some mental issues. I just think that I want to say this as a Democrat. I'm still concerned. I don't think we've gone far enough. I have parents who tell me that they're still scared to send their kids to school, especially what happened in this country right now. But the speaker is to be applauded for honoring his commitment. And I just think that other Republicans should join him in doing what he's attempting to do to unify this state.
Thank you, Tharon. And I want Tharon to know this. Speaker Burns, every once in a while, he'll elbow me in the ribs and be like, Tharon always has a lot more nice things about me than I hear you say. Mr. Speaker, you need to listen more, because I think I've been a pretty vocal supporter of what you're trying to get done. In fact, my January Georgia Trend column. Tharon and I both write columns in Georgia Trend, was about Speaker Burns' leadership on this particular issue. And I think we'll get more of the details as the week moves on and what he plans to do. I think this is one of the most pressing issues for parents and students in the state, making sure that we can drop those kids off in the morning with a lot of confidence that we're going to pick them up in the afternoon. The school where Tharon's kid and my kid go, there's 2 police officers there when you pull in, and you see them every day. They're very visual and notable. I feel like that gives you a sense of, it's not certainty, but a sense of relief to some degree, I guess, to see them there. I think it's going to be a big part of the normalcy of schools moving forward in Georgia. More law enforcement on the scene.
Yeah, sad, but we need that safety net for sure. Well, we'll talk about that in greater detail once we know for sure what that plan entails next week. So thank you again for joining us for another week of Political Breakfast.
And lots going on at the General Assembly. I mean, we have a big agenda in 2025.
For sure.
And happy Black History Month to everyone. And Brian mentioned our school. Shout out to Comer Yates, who sent out a Happy Black History Month email to all of the parents. And so I said, Lisa, we got the blackest, whitest head of a school in Atlanta. But we appreciate Comer for doing that every single year and sending out that Happy Black History Month email. We appreciate it.
Yeah. On that note, we will end. All right. Y'all have a great week. We'll talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See y'all later.